Today I'll be using my new, these little arms. I've got a magnet on them, so I just stick them onto the desk. I've got kind of like an overhang, so I stick them to the light, and then I can position my reference however I want. So I got a little Iron Man head, 1/6 scale, bought it off eBay. I don't think I can keep it in frame, but I'll be able to see it. And then I've also got this little guy. It's also an arm with a magnet on the end and a light in case I need to, if I need to light the reference. But I don't want to deal with that quite yet. Hey, Kari, how you doing? Good to hear from you, man. So I'm gonna start with some gouache. I've got Holbein mostly, and we're gonna start off with some Sepia, just to define kind of the look of everything. Maybe a little bit of umber in case I want to get things a little warmer. I would show you my palette, but my tripod or monopod, whatever you want to call it, it just broke on me. So I'm afraid if I move it, terrible things will happen. So apologies for that. Usually I like to show everybody everything. All right. So the brush that I'm using is a silver brush, black velvet, round number 4. And usually I like to work with something bigger, but right now this is my newest brush, and therefore it's got the best point on it. So that's why I'm using it. I was using a Rosemary and Company Series 22 Kolinsky, but it's kind of lost its initial charm. I mean, it's a great brush. It just, when you use it a lot, you lose that tip. So if you guys have seen me work at all, I always start kind of monochromatically, very, very light, very washed out. And then I don't get like into the bold strokes until the very end. And really what I'm doing now is just kind of, I'm still basically drawing, it's paint and I'm using a paintbrush, but really what I'm doing is planning things out. Especially with a more, realistic portrait, based in reality of Iron Man, because I kind of have to decide up front where all my reflections are going to be and all that kind of stuff. And, normally if I were doing something like this, I would have a photo reference, but right now I've got the actual thing in front of me, the little 1/6 scale helmet, which is great for some things, but in terms of reflections, it can actually kind of, it gives you too many options, because, you have to kind of decide on a lighting situation. You have to decide which reflections you're going to use, which ones you're going to ignore. But the nice thing about it is that you you can kind of turn it around and change things if you don't like the way a shadow is falling across the form or anything like that. So, you know, positives and negatives, as with everything. Yeah, so really, you know, you're deciding which part is going to be lighter and which part is going to be darker. You know, the cheek line, or you know, I don't know what you would call it, of the faceplate. You know, this is an interesting transition area because it's going to be dark on top right here, and then midway it kind of switches to the dark being on the bottom. You know, that's the deal with reflective surfaces, is they change very quickly. You know, you don't get like shadow turning the form or anything, and it's what makes it look so cool, and it's also what makes it challenging. What's kind of nice about it though is you can actually you can make up a lot of it. You know, like if I do some crazy old reflection right in the middle of his helmet, nobody's going to call me on it because, you know, you can't say whether or not it's completely accurate because you have to see it within the context of the setting. But, you know, basically I'm putting in my darkest darks. Maybe I'll break out the Rosemary and Company brush. This is the Kolinsky hair. You can see, you know, I mean, it's holding a decent point. It's just not razor sharp. You know, when you first get them, I mean, it's like a needle. This is still fine. I'm wondering if I should define the red and the yellow yet. Sometimes I like, if I'm painting in gouache, I like just kind of jumping in and starting out, you know, doing the full color, but I want to get a few more details before I do that, at least on one side. Let's see what some of the questions are. What do we get? Who do you most enjoy drawing, Spider-Man or Daredevil? I don't know. I probably have to say Spidey, just because there's just more poses that you can do. And also I like his costume better, but I still love drawing Daredevil. Did I ever try Treacle brushes? I don't know if I probably have, but I can't say for sure. I mean, I've tried a whole lot of different ones. And like I said, you know, this one, it's fine. It's just, when doing watercolor or gouache, it helps to have that super, super fine point. Because the point, it's not about laying down paint, it's about restricting water flow, I think. I think that's what it's more about. And most of the time it doesn't matter that much, but if you're doing something like this, like with Iron Man, you know, it gets pretty technical. So there's some parts where you really need to have absolute control over where a line goes, where the pigment settles. My favorite reflections are actually always the ones at the edges, especially on a curved surface, like either on Iron Man or if you're drawing a car or something. I think there's a name for the effect. I want to say it's like Fresnel or something. You know, it's when the light is glancing from, it's actually from behind, hits the curved surface and then comes towards the viewer. And it really just pushes things back. And also if you're drawing something reflective, it helps to establish the object within the environment, because you can take those colors from the environment and really mix them in on the edges. It really creates that sense that it really is a real object and it's within an environment, a believable one. You know, Iron Man and like cars in general, they're interesting to paint just because there are so many different ways that light is absorbed and reflected and refracted. That's why it looks cool, and it's why it's difficult to paint, but when it is painted well, it's super satisfying, because it really just sells the whole feel. You know what? I'm getting impatient. I'm gonna throw some red in there. And use a little bit of alizarin crimson. And a little bit of flame red for some of the warmer parts. You know, if this were a more complex painting, I would want to establish the drawing a little bit better, but we're just going to jump right in. A little bit of alizarin, a little bit of burnt umber. Always have my little test strip next to it. Now, this is not going to be the final color. I'm just kind of blocking things in. I'm going to try some flame red with a little bit of sepia mixed in there, which is a much thicker mixture. Am I enjoying this cold California weather? Yeah. Anything's better than fires. What's your reference as an artist for your work? Any European or Argentine artists? Yeah, I mean, I don't know about Argentine. I'm sure there's some in there. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody. I can't use that part of my head while I'm painting. But as far as European artists, Enki Bilal, I think. And Mobius. I mean, you wouldn't know that they're an influence on me. Like, I grew up on like Jim Lee, and then got super into Alex Ross and Joe Madureira. But like, the only one I think people would be able to pick out from my work as being an influence would be Alex Ross, and that's mainly just because we both paint. It's not really like the way we draw. Yeah, when it comes to like style and all that, it's just no telling where all that comes from. And my style has changed. Everyone's does as they progress or regress. Sometimes I think I'm faster than I used to be, and other times I'm like way slower. Alex Raymond? Yeah, definitely some Alex Raymond. When I made the switch in right around 2008 from painted work to inked work, I was looking at a lot of old school inkers. So Alex Raymond and Milton Caniff. That's really where my inking style comes from. And I think it was around then that my drawing style actually developed. That's kind of the weird thing about paint is the whole time I was painting, I don't really feel like I was developing much as an artist. It wasn't until I started drawing, I got on I was never a monthly artist, but I was on some monthly books, and that's when I really started, I think, to develop a style I could call my own. Now again, the paint that I'm putting in. It's almost more of a placeholder. I think if I weren't doing this live, I would be putting in a more varied color. Because up here, this is going to be very. It's not even going to be red. It's going to be almost gray. Like if you just isolated the color and looked at it, it's going to be like gray. But what it's going to look like is red metal reflecting something else, and that's kind of the interesting thing about both perception and reflective materials is that the absolute color will not necessarily read as that particular color. It won't read as gray. It'll read as something else. It'll just read as metal. Especially this side plate right here. Although what I'm going to do on the right side is I'm going to have it backlit, so it's almost going to be bright white, like the white of the paper is all you'll see, but I'm not going to really mess with that yet. I just want to do a better job of defining the red and the yellow. What I do want to capture is some of the brighter red highlights. So this little section right here, that's where we're getting the warm light that's above me. That's my main drawing light, is reflecting off of his forehead right here. So I'm going to use flame red, almost pure, and it's going to be almost opaque, but not quite. So the white of the paper, it's still showing through, and what it's creating is kind of like a stained glass effect, where it's white light being filtered through something red, and that gives you a much more saturated red than if I, for instance, just laid down an opaque pass of that red. Like, it would still look very red, but it's, you know, if you've ever used gouache, it's kind of chalky. So I always save those passes for the end, and if I can plan it well enough, I will try and keep all the really intense parts semi-transparent. And then there's going to be another fleck of red here. And then just right here, and actually I've kind of lost my opportunity to do it right here because I've already painted it down. That's fine. When that happens, I usually go back over it with acrylic gouache, which is just acrylic paint that dries matte. And then I can glaze over that. So instead of the white of the paper, I'll get the white of the acrylic gouache. And everything works out. Pardon me, I need some water. And forgot to mention, the whole reason I'm doing my second live stream of the day, I'll be at Comic Art Live this weekend. Only one of these days, but I'll have a few of these 4x6 pieces to sell with my my art rep, Splash Page Art, Mark Hay. He'll have a couple of these already done too. So there's Spidey and there's Carnage. The last time we did something like that, they went for about $200 a pop. The fully painted ones go for a little bit more, but I'll leave it up to him to decide that because he's better at it than I am. I need to put some more colors on the palette. What have I got? How about some gray number 3? When I do the live streams, I kind of get impatient because I want to make some progress, so it's not too boring for you guys. So that just means blocking in things a little bit faster than I might normally. What if I could show you my reference a little bit better? There it is. So it's getting there. I'm gonna have to invent the lighting from the eyes because I definitely want the eyes to be glowing. So I'll just have to kind of come up with that on my own. Maybe I'll try turning on this light so I can get some of the side reflections. Yeah. I think it'll interfere with the camera too much. But to make the eyes glow, I'll just get a little bit of blue. A little bit of white. This is pure blue, which is just a phthalo blue. Primary blue. And I can use some white on the palette. Ooh, I'm gonna need the pliers. So this is just permanent white, Holbein artist gouache. I always think it's funny, like just how little paint I actually use. Like I barely put any on my palette, and it's still too much because I paint so thinly. Like I still have the same tubes that I had from a decade ago. You know, like Holbein, they would have a booth at New York Comic Con, and I would like load up because everything was 50% off, and like I still have those extra tubes, like I haven't gone through them. But it's also just because I haven't painted. I don't paint as much as I used to. I would like to. I did finish one piece this year. One like fully painted piece, which will be revealed, I think, next week from Sideshow. So I can't say what it is yet, but I liked it. I can't say if you will or not, but I had a whole lot of fun doing it. It was nice to do something old school. And then I just signed on to do another poster for them for next March. That's my due date. I don't know when they'll actually produce it. And then I've got at least one more print coming out from Gray Matter Art that is a previously done cover that they'll be turning into a print. Just like I did with the last group from them, which was Daredevil 1.5, Wolverine, the Salvador Dali one, and Spider-Man 646. And what else do I have coming out? Oh, and then this month, I've got my very first story that I wrote for Marvel. This will be my debut as a writer, so that's pretty exciting. It's a vision story, part of the Alex Ross anthology called Marvel Snapshots. So I'm real excited about that. It's not something I've ever done before, so it's a career first, which is always exciting. It's a weird year for it to come out, but I finished it like in February, so it feels really old to me now. But it'll be new for all you readers out there. Yeah, remember me talking about it before? I've been talking about it for a year. It's like, I want it to come out, but it'll come out when it comes out. That's all there is to it. All right, let's get some ochre in there. Let's see, what happened to my ochre? There it is. My palette it's the best version I've ever done of it. It's a piece of plexiglass with a paper towel wrapped around it. I think I posted videos of it. I need to do a dedicated video so you guys can see. Let me pull this out. I hope it doesn't break. So here's my setup. These are the little bendy things. and that's my palette. So it's a piece of plexiglass underneath there, paper towel on top of that, and then parchment paper wrapped around there. And so it creates a little well around right here where you can pour water in. And it just, very slowly through capillary action just draws it up all along the paper towel, up and out of the water onto the plexiglass via the paper towel, and then just gently wets the parchment paper and keeps it just at the perfect amount of dampness so that these paints will stay fresh, as if you just put them out of the tube for days and even weeks if you tend to it, like a little garden, which I tend to if I'm not being lazy. And I am lazy when it comes to palettes, so that's why I've done this, so that I don't always have to put out a new palette. So often you'll find, like, if I, hold on, let me make sure this doesn't snap. Oh, there we go. And I forgot what I was talking about. Anyway. Sorry, I was really scared my monopod was gonna break again. It literally happened just as I was putting my phone up. I have a new phone, which is nice. I just got a Pixel 5, so that this phone, my Samsung Galaxy 7, can be kind of like my dedicated streaming device. So that I don't if my wife texts me, I don't have to stop what I'm doing and quit the live stream. Yeah, I've been wanting to do that for a while. It just makes things easier. I actually, I have other phones, and I had tried to use those as dedicated, but they were too old. Not enough, I don't know, not enough will to live or what, but they just couldn't do it. Because, with 2020, I've been doing a lot more live streaming. I mean, not a ton, but just more than I was doing. And I've got one coming up this weekend with Comic Art Live, like I mentioned. That's where this piece will be sold along with the other two, if not more. If I can make more before then, I will. And then also I will be on. Sideshow has their own live stream, which will be this Friday, I think. Let me double check that. Oh, they're emailing me right now. So I will live stream with Sideshow this Friday, the 13th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. And for that, they actually have they're legitimate, unlike me. They'll have somebody who's interviewing me, and I think we're going to do like I don't think it's like a draw off, but they will give me a prompt, and I'll try to draw as they talk to me. I actually think that's a recipe for disaster, because I can color, I can ink and talk, but man, I don't think I can draw and talk. It's just too much brain power is required of my total CPU. But if you want to see me embarrass myself, feel free. It should be fun. Those guys are always nice to me. You've always treated me very well. All right, I'm not going to touch this area because I know it's going to be like a lot of rim lighting, but I don't know quite yet what the pattern's going to be because I'm actually going to shine a light onto it. So I'm not even going to mess with that at the moment. Just rest assured it's going to be very bright and almost white. That's even too much. I've already done too much. All right, to give you an idea what I meant for this reflection back here, you know, there's going to be some red in it, but it ain't going to be much. I think it's going to be mostly gray. This is gray number 3. And maybe a little bit of white too. And a touch of sepia. You can see by itself is what it looks like. It's just boom. It's like mauve or something. I don't know. That might even be too dark. So I'm going to drag my brush a little bit. You know, it's the kind of color that I wouldn't color anything. I would never paint something this color. But as part of a reflective object, it's perfect. But then, you know, once I went that dark, then I need to make this this reflection a lot darker. So right now it's mostly red, and I need to go almost as dark as I can go. The darkest dark I can make, which is going to be sepia and alizarin crimson. And I think that's about it. Maybe a touch of flame red. You know, I find that I tend to use like 3 reds. You know, like a really bright one, a standard one, like what most people think of as red, and then alizarin. I'm going to use the soft edge of my brush to give it that fade. Because one of the funny things that happens with, you know, reflective cars or Iron Man, and honestly, let's be honest, I paint a lot more Iron Man than I paint cars. You're actually getting 2 lighting effects that are on top of each other. So you've got, you know, this base red coat, which acts, you know, not unlike a regular object. You know, the brightest part is towards the light and the darker part is away from the light. But then on top of that, you have this, you know, clear coat, which acts as, you know, like a piece of glass on top of it. So that's where you get kind of this mixture of reflection and form shadow. And so what was I saying? Oh yeah, so like this transition from the bright red into the dark is actually going to be fairly smooth, and then this transition from the very dark, this is actually a reflection, to this one on the side is going to be very stark. Ha. No pun intended. God, I'm a nerd. Apologies to everyone. My parents, my wife, my children. They're the ones who get it the worst. My daughter made a pun the other day, and I can't remember what it was, but it was solid. It was, you know, it was dad joke territory. I was very proud. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna do all right, kid. You're gonna be the only mom making dad jokes. Okay. Let me rotate this a bit. And so this side is actually going to be like this version, this color, but even lighter and even less saturated. And, you know, part of that can be affected by what I put behind it. Like if I put a piece of white paper behind it, it's going to change the look. It's going to look even grayer. but I want a little bit of warmth. This is just craft paper behind it. Maybe some burnt umber. Still too dark. Yeah, like the very first piece I ever did for Marvel was an Iron Man cover, and my dad was looking at it. I was painting it in my parents' garage, and my dad paid me a compliment. He said, "I can't tell what color that is, and that's a good thing." I'm paraphrasing, but he was looking at the colors I was using, and it just looked like the thing I was trying to paint. It didn't look like alizarin mixed with gray number 3 or whatever. So that'll go there. This will get the same reflection. It's light glancing off of the top layer. So you don't even see the base coat, which is red. It's just the reflection of what's behind it. So it's actually mostly white. And I don't paint very thickly, so you never get like really, like a chunk of white. I don't do that. I'm always too scared to do that until the very end. When I know exactly what I want. At this point, I'm still kind of feeling my way around it, which is nice. I like not knowing exactly, even though I'm, kind of known for using reference, I, don't like to just copy it. I like to be surprised a little bit as I'm working. You see how cool that is in terms of warmth? It's almost pink. And once you've done this enough times, you can kind of get a feel for it. Like you can push those effects. And right now I'm almost using pure white here. And my favorite parts are when you get the red reflecting red. I did some of that on the Infinity War poster that I did, because you get the sunlight and it's hitting his, the red parts of his suit, and then that's reflecting on another red part, and that's where you're actually going to get your brightest red, or at least your most saturated red. Because when the highlights hit it, if it's like Iron Man, oh, and this just came undone. If it's Iron Man and he's standing in the sun reflection is actually probably going to be bright white. You're not going to get a pure red until you find some other, lighting intricacies. That kind of stuff. It can be tough to predict, but again, it gets easier with practice. You get to recognize, kind of your favorite moments and what you're looking for. I'm going to put in some of my tight details using sepia. Sepia is about as dark as I like to get, either sepia or Payne's gray. Because if I use black, it just kind of, I don't know. I like the way that light permeates the shadows when you don't use pure black. And so if I want a warmer shadow, I'll use Sepia, and if I want a cooler one, I'll use Payne's Gray. So in this case, it's Sepia. Now, because it's gouache, it's, you know, it's never as dark as when you first put it down. But that's just life, and you get used to it. As I tell my family, deal with it. I'm such a butthead. You might be able to hear my daughter in the background. I do, you know, I have my own space, my own studio. That's the most of the bottom floor of our house. But there's very little sound insulation. All right, time to do some more dark reds. Sepia. Now we're talking. All right, I want to put in some of the dark shadows or reflections, I don't know what you want to call them, on the faceplate. So I'm going to use Sepia, burnt umber, a little bit of gray, and maybe a touch of yellow ochre. I always find yellow objects can be tough. I like painting them, but it's somewhat counterintuitive because, you know, it's only yellow in, like, if it's got a bright light on it, and anything in shadow is actually going to be more orangish. Like, you'll never use yellow paint. And for the longest time, the only yellow that I owned was yellow ochre. I had different yellows in school, but I never used them. Now I do have some lemon yellow on my palette, but the only time I ever use that is if I need something to be green. So now I'm almost doing, it's like almost a dry brush technique. Because I'm kind of experimenting to see what reflective pattern I want to keep. And also I'm being mindful of these glowing eyes. So let's say if this shadow went all the way up to the eye socket, I'm going to get lighter and lighter and lighter as I get to the eye. Because I want to leave that in order to give it that glowing feeling. And also, you know, it gives a little bit of texture. One of the nicest things about the Iron Man, you know, movie design is that it's all like brushed metal. So, you know, you'll have like tiny little chrome highlights, you know, super reflective stuff. And, you know, it's famously hot rod red. It's like a car, but the metal parts are brushed. So you get some of those really nice textures and what do I want to call them? Like vectored reflections. Meaning like because the metal has a pattern on it, you know, almost microscopic pattern, it reflects light in a certain direction and not in another direction, which just has a much different feel from just a highly polished surface where you get those mirror effects. Uh-oh, I can hear the heat coming on. Let me turn that off because it's about to get loud. Oh dear. Let me turn it down. Boom, boom. There we go. Okay. It gets really loud down here. It's actually the reason I bought noise canceling headphones. Maybe that's a good time for a quick little break. See if they have any questions and have a glass of water. Cheers. Here's a closer look at it. You know, this is probably what I'm happiest with right here. Is this little, you know, it doesn't take many brush strokes, and I probably, you know, I won't really get into the stuff I like until after the live stream, but that's more of what I'll be doing, of like, you know, bolder strokes and trying to get that right color on the first try. But prior to that, I'm just kind of messing around. I'm scumbling. I'm doing, you know, watercolor washes just to get a feel, and so that I can actually, you know, believe in what I'm doing, in the sense of, you know, believing in it as a three-dimensional object. And once that locks in, then I have a better idea of what I want, and I can be much bolder with my approach. All right, let me go back through some of these. I've missed a lot of stuff. Spidey and Carnage look great, thank you. I wish I had some extra cash. Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm doing them. So I know the feeling. How often do you spray your watercolors? Not often. So if, like, this is gouache, and I don't really ever have to spray them because they're on a stay wet palette. But if I'm doing watercolor, I spray it kind of once at the beginning, and then I don't have to again because I just add water with my brush. Question for someone who wants to, get into more painted work with pencil ink background, what are some proper first steps? Start with watercolor and just try coloring in your already existing work. Especially if you're on the comic end of things, like, I wouldn't try fully painted stuff. If anyone ever asked me, you know, how do I get into painted comics, I tell them don't. You know, it looks nice for a cover, but, you know, it's just so hard. I wouldn't recommend it. And, you know, I consider myself successful in terms of like if I wanted to, I could get work doing it from Marvel or DC or whatever. But I can't keep up with that kind of, you know, the deadlines and the schedule and all that kind of stuff. And I'm supposedly a professional, so I wouldn't recommend it. Once told somebody at SCAD, they had, like me, they had grand dreams of becoming a painter of comics, and I said, first draw your first comic, so you realize how hard it is just to make a comic on its own, and then if you still feel like painting, give it a shot. Otherwise, just stick with the drawing because drawing is hard enough. Let's see. Looking dope, thanks. Um, the vision story is just 8 pages, correct? Um, did I get any of that hailing rain in the Bay Area the other day? I don't think so. No. It's always very windy where we live. Oh, you got the Modern Masters book. Nice. Thanks, Josh. I hope to get more of those in at some point. I just gotta email them. I think they still have copies, but it's been sold out of my shop for a while. You're in class and you're watching me stream. Don't do that. What things are you not learning? You know, this will be up on YouTube later if you want. Don't miss your studies. All right, so we're almost at an hour. I'll do a couple more details, and then I'm gonna cut things short. So, any last questions? Let me know. What's that? Yeah, I can get Bud. I gotta go grab my son. So, last chance for questions if you have any. I think this is the latest Iron Man. I bought this. I prefer the circles on the sides to the newest version. But the last version. Spoiler alert. The last Iron Man. I'm sure we'll see more though. It was great because it's like the MCU's version of the classic, you know, and I loved it. But there's something about the very first one, the Mark III, I still just absolutely love. And honestly, I love the Mark One. I wish I'd gotten a chance to do the Mark One at some point. Maybe I will. I guess no. Technically, I did. I painted it, but it was like a monochromatic one. It was for the Iron Man 3 poster. So did I paint it? Yes. Do I want to paint it again? Definitely, because I never gave it justice. I think it's just almost like it more than the Mark III, and I love the Mark III, so it's saying something. But I'm not crazy about these lines on this final design, so I'm gonna kind of play them down a little bit. Because every subsequent mark or version, in my mind, I just always compare it to the third one. And does it stand up? And they also I still love the color from that version, which was more of a, they say hot rod red in the movie, but it's really like a deep dark red. So all I'm doing is just kind of scoring all the lines. And then what I'll probably do is go in back here with some acrylic gouache and do a bright white mark and then glaze that with some red, and that'll give me the look I'm going for. You know, where it's just like it's catching just the smallest edge of light, just where the two seams come together, and you know, it really makes it pop in a way that, you know, it's such a small detail, but it makes such a big difference. Same thing down here, because there's going to be a little edge of yellow. And so in order to make that pop, I'm actually going to darken this area. Darken it down. So it looks like there's that little ridge where the seams come together. And for me, that just, it changes everything. Like, it turns it from like a cartoon drawing into like a real three-dimensional piece. All right, I think that's about as far as I'm going to go for now. Because 1 hour that's enough. I don't want to bore you guys. I'll post more when it's ready to go. Let's see if there are any more questions. It's poetry class. All right. Sculpting Swamp Thing right now. Oh, that's always good. I don't think I've never drawn him professionally, that's for sure. Convenience green or mixing my own? You know, I do have greens. I rarely use them unless it's the Hulk, because it's very little time, very little chances to get, you know, paint foliage. It is nice when I get to do it. I do enjoy it because it's like I can't go wrong. Working on any new comics? Absolutely not, sadly. I would love to do it more, but until this pandemic gets, I think things are looking better than they were, but until things are more predictable, I need to deal with small projects that I can handle. How do you deal with getting the right value in mixing gouache? I just try it. You know, that's one reason I like gouache over acrylic, because I can slap it down on there, and if it makes sense, great, you did it. And if it doesn't, you can just pick it right off with either the brush or a Q-tip or a paper towel or whatever. Use a scrap sheet. Yeah, I mean, I always have a scrap sheet just to test things out. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching. I will post this once again once it's all finished. And I hope you guys can stop by Comic Art Live this Saturday and Sunday, where this will be for sale, and also Spider-Man and Carnage. And then I think we'll be debuting my newest sideshow painting on Friday, a live stream at 10:30. So check out my website, paulrevere.com, and I'll post details as soon as I have them. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good day. Stay safe and wear a mask.